prompting and praying, he finally kissed me. He kissed me before on the cheek and on the head and on the hand even, but he'd never kissed my lips. And boy, was he doing that now. We kissed and kissed and kissed. My eyes were shut tight. And when I did peek, I saw his word too. Freddie, deciding they'd seen enough, grabbed Bill, turned out the lights, and split. Once they did, we did the deed. It was over quickly. Very quickly. It kind of hurt, and it wasn't really pleasant, but we had at last consummated my love. Knowing I had to get back before curfew, feeling embarrassed, shy, and euphoric, I took my leave. From then on, most nights played out the same. Alan and I hung out in the shacks with Bill and Freddie, who'd eventually leave when the kissing began. The lights were always turned off, the sessions always short. Alan never spoke of his feelings for me, never displayed any sign of affection other than when we were alone in the dark. We never held hands, walked arm in arm. We were always far apart and unconnected. Young and insecure, I longed for more. Midsummer, Alan and Bill headed off a la Easy Rider with jeans, pot, and a rebel with a cause attitude to explore the USA by motorcycle. Despondent about seeing them go, Alan assured me that when they got back, they were going to get an apartment in the city and fight the good fight for freedom. I had visions of visiting them on weekends and being their Wendy. That thought kept me sane for the remainder of August. Just prior to Labor Day, Sue got a call from Alan expressing his love of Ohio and the struggle of the working class there. He decided to stay. His efforts were needed. I was blindsided. For the next few months, I wrote to him incessantly. Receiving a note or two back, it was always about the struggle and never anything personal at all. He could have been writing to his aunt. I had plans with Sue to stay at her family's apartment for the holidays and prayed that Alan would be there. It was all I could think of every waking minute. On the drive upstate, my heart was bursting, filled with hope. As soon as I arrived, Sue greeted me with, "Alan just got here. He brought a couple of friends with him." I decided to reserve judgment. As I was unpacking, as I hope you are too, as I was unpacking, Alan came into Sue's room. Running to hug him, he tensed a bit before responding. "Good to see you, Andy. Let's go talk." Let's go talk. Leading the way to the family room, which had a magnificent view of the snowy mountains, he sat in front of the roaring fire. It was the perfect setting for romance, but I sensed that was not on the agenda. "You know, Andy, I think it makes sense for us to just be friends. I'm so far away and all." And there it was. My heart sank. "I haven't been with anybody since you," he continued. "Neither have I," I said with renewed hope. Grasping at straws, wanting to find a way to change his mind, I added, "I think friends can still be close." He looked at me for the first time that day. "You mean no strings attached, just close and that's all?" "Sure, why not?" I didn't mean it at all, but if it was the only way I could have him, I was willing to try. Pete and Taylor, a couple of intellectuals from Ohio, looked the part. We all did, with our blue jeans, flannel shirts, and work boots. Sitting down as Alan introduced us, Taylor was old, at least 25. And she was short, stocky, wore no makeup, and was sort of butch. She couldn't possibly be the reason he was dumping me. And yet, as we began talking, I noticed Alan revered her every word. After dinner, in a lively discussion of Lyndon Johnson around the fire, everyone retired to their respective rooms for the night. I was bunking with Sue. As soon as I'd gotten washed and into pajamas, I heard softly from down the hall, "Andy." Then, "Hey, Andy, come on in here a minute, would you?" It was pretty clear from Alan's tone what was on his mind. And maybe it wasn't just sex he wanted. Maybe he'd had a change of heart. Sue shrugged and extended her arm towards the door. I walked slowly down the long corridor towards his room, still smarting from our earlier conversation, praying for a turnaround. Sticking my head through the door, I could see Alan lying in bed, covers pulled up to his bare chest, his arms on top of the blanket. He motioned for me to sit down. "Did you mean what you said about friends just being close?" Disappointed and hurt, but so longing for his love, I forced a smile. I guess I thought if we made love, he'd realize what a horrible mistake he was making and change his mind. He turned out the lights as I stood beside him. We kissed, but it was awkward and somehow unfamiliar. It had been about 6 months, but still. Fumbling around, we went through the motions, but it was awful and over really quickly. All I wanted to do was leave. which was clearly the same thought that Alan was having, as he seemed relieved when I said goodnight and went back to Sue's room. The rest of that vacation was a nightmare. Alan and I had little to do with each other. He spent an awful lot of time with Taylor, and sure enough, soon afterwards, I found out they were engaged. Adding insult to injury, they married about a year later, holding a reception on my 17th birthday. I was in attendance playing the good friend, but I cried my eyes out for weeks before and after. Some years later, while driving cross-country on my way back to college senior year, I was staying in Ohio for a couple of days and called Alan, who was now a dad. "Hi, Alan, it's Andy. I'm close by. Can you meet me for a drink?" "Yeah, sure. Where?" It was clearly a secret rendezvous for him. I guess I was now the other woman. What a twist of fate. How many times have I been the last girlfriend before a guy married someone else? A lot. Wonder what that means. When I got to the local saloon, Alan was waiting for me, looking older, less James Deanish, and more married-ish. We had some awkward conversation, both begging off before long. He had a family to get home to, and I had a boyfriend waiting to ignore me in Tucson. Grateful that I'd shed my baby fat and was now a young woman and looked it, I prayed that I left him wanting. There was closure in that meeting. It certainly helped me to stop fantasizing about him. Many years later, while visiting friends in upstate New York, I tracked down Sue, with whom I'd lost touch. Paying her a visit, I got to meet her son, and she mine. Showing me some recent family photos, she spoke of Alan and Taylor and their two grown children. Alan was beefy and balding. I tried to find the essence in his eyes, but it was hard as the picture was taken from far away. If not for Sue showing me that photo, I never would have believed it was him. I asked for his phone number, and she reluctantly gave it to me. At Christmas later that year, I decided to call. It turned out that he and Taylor were divorced. Sue hadn't said a word. He had long ago given up his crusade and was now a real estate agent trying to act. Life's funny. I subtly, as a Mack truck, tried to get him to tell me how he felt about me back in the day. He was as withholding as ever, simply reminding me how young I was at the time. And then a light bulb went off. I was jailbait. A 19-year-old boy and a not quite 15-year-old girl, he could have gotten in a whole heap of trouble, especially with my dad, who was close at hand at the time. With that knowledge came some peace, but it was based purely on assumption. As was his custom, Alan left me in the dark, which set the stage nicely for all the dysfunctional relationships to come.